The Association of American Medical Colleges is pleased to welcome you to today's webinar on preparing for the MCAT exam. We are recording and we'll make the archive available afterwards. We will email you once we post it. We did mute all participant audio. If you need help, please send us a message. The presentation includes time for Q&A. You may submit a question at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. To access the slides, please click on the Handouts tab where you logged in today. I'll also post a link in the chat box. It's now my pleasure to welcome Lauren Bowser. Lauren.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Lauren Bowser. I'm the Director for MCAT Preparation, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to share with you some information about the MCAT exam and the resources that the AAMC offers to help you prepare. But first, what is the AAMC? The AAMC is the Association of American Medical Colleges. We serve academic medicine communities. So what does that mean to you? So at the stage you are in your journey, that means the AAMC administers the MCAT exam, and we provide resources to support you through the AMCAS application process and well into your career as a resident and practicing physician. So in our session today, I'm going to start with a quick overview of the exam. We're going to talk about the importance of using effective study strategies, and then how to get started with building your study plan. We'll review the MCAT resources offered by the AAMC and what a final rehearsal of exam day could look like. Finally, we'll talk about the fee assistance program and other resources, and then we'll end the hour with some Q&A. So while this session is focused on preparing for the MCAT, the first step in preparing is understanding the test. So we're going to start with a quick overview of the exam. The MCAT exam is a standardized multiple choice exam that's been part of the medical school admissions process for over 90 years, and it's used by all US and many Canadian medical schools. The exam tests your knowledge of concepts and skills that medical school faculty and physicians, as well as medical students and residents, identified as important to know when you start medical school. You likely already know that the MCAT assesses your knowledge of natural, behavioral, and social science concepts and principles, but it also assesses problem solving and critical thinking. This exam doesn't just test what you know, but how you apply your knowledge and solve problems. So as you prepare, please remember that your MCAT scores are just one piece of your overall application to medical school. So it's important, but it's just one piece of many that admissions committees use to evaluate your readiness for programs. So they're also looking at your transcripts, your work and volunteer experiences, your essays, letters of recommendation, and getting to know you through the interview process. So it's much more than just the MCAT exam. The exam includes 4 sections. Again, each question is multiple choice. There are 2 sections in the natural sciences. There's a section in the behavioral and social sciences, and there's the critical analysis and reasoning skills section, also known as CARS. The concepts tested in the science section of the exam are found in classes you've taken or are taking right now. These concepts are taught at most undergrad institutions in introductory biology, physics, psychology, sociology, and first semester biochemistry, as well as general and organic chemistry. The undergrad course content will vary by institution, so your personal experience could be a little bit different, but overall, that's where the concepts are typically taught throughout the undergraduate programs. The critical analysis and reasoning skills section is very similar to other reading, comprehension, and reasoning tests that you may have taken throughout your academic career. It includes passages and questions that test your ability to comprehend and analyze what you read. The passages that you'll be presented with pull from humanities and social science disciplines, emphasizing but not limited to philosophy, ethics, population health, and the studies of diverse cultures. This section requires no specific content or disciplinary knowledge. All the information you need to answer the question is provided in the passage and the questions themselves. So no specific knowledge is needed prior to that. Many of the resources that we're going to talk today talk about today are available in the MCAT official prep hub. So I want to make sure that you know how to log in. So you can find the prep hub by going to aamc.org/MCAT prep. And it's going to be the first blue button on the upper right side of the screen. So if you look at the screenshots on the slide, the one over to the right, it has the blue button that says MCAT Official Prep Hub. That's where you're going to click. In order to sign into the hub, you need your one AAMC ID. And this is a username and password that you're going to use to access many AAMC services. So you'll need it for registering for the MCAT exam, to purchase products, to submit your AMCAS application. So this is an ID you're going to need over and over again. So when you click on that button, you log in with your AAMC ID. This is where you're going to find all of the free resources for the MCAT prep. And if you end up purchasing any materials or get them through another program, that is also where you'll find all of your materials. So all of your prep materials will live in this one place. So now that we've done a quick review of the exam, we're going to talk about and we've learned how to access the prep hub. We're going to talk about effective study strategies and how to get started. Yes, there is a lot of content on the MCAT. A question we hear a lot is, how do I get started? So before you jump in and start doing practice problems, it is best to take a step back and learn what is tested and put together a plan. So first you need to gather information and become familiar with what's on the test. You may start by even answering some questions, thinking about your academic journey to this point. So what is going to be tested within each section of the exam? As you think about that information, when did you learn that material? Or have you learned that material yet? Is there a class that you haven't taken yet that's going to be on this exam, or content that's going to be covered? Think about whether or not this content is fresh in your mind because you just finished that class, or you're still teaching that material through some of your other experiences. Or has it been a few years and it's a little bit rusty? As you're thinking about it, you're really evaluating your comfort level with the material. How did you do in these courses when you had the material? Was organic chemistry a class where you really did very, very well, or was it something of a struggle? Answers to these questions aren't really going to, they're just going to help you prioritize where you want to spend your time. So as you review that content, you're going to think about, what is your background in this area? What's your level of content or comfort with that information? Because it helps you to figure out, where your starting place is with that material. You really want to start thinking about this journey as a learning exercise and not just test preparation. As you go through medical school, this is not the last difficult exam you're going to take. So your approach to this is something that you're going to be able to repeat as you go through other exams throughout medical school. So as part of gathering information and becoming familiar with the exam, you're going to use the What's on the MCAT exam content outline. So before you do practice questions, before you spend time, you want to make sure you spend time with this resource so that you understand what's being tested. Each section of the MCAT exam measures multiple foundational concepts made up of multiple content categories, as well as specific scientific inquiry and reasoning skills. So as you review the content categories and the specific topics covered, you're also going to be able to see the undergraduate courses where they're typically taught. This is included in the content outline, and this will help you to evaluate how this aligns with your personal experience. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time to review the 4 sections of the test. Don't expect that you could just read through this in one sitting. As you begin to prep, set aside a few days at the beginning to really understand the material and understand what you're being tested, what's going to be tested on the exam. We have a few different formats that we offer this tool. So one is a PDF. This PDF is available on our website, and we've heard from some advisors that they recommend students actually print this out and keep a copy of this PDF alongside their studying their classes, especially if they start early, start thinking about this even as freshmen, printing this out and keeping this with them so that as they're learning the materials in that intro biology or intro chemistry, they're kind of keeping track of what the material is going to be covered on the MCAT exam when they reach it later. We also have this available on our website, just as pages that you can click through. And one of the screenshot on the left is from our website, so you can see kind of that information. And the other place that we have that is actually on the Prep Hub. We've created for you a course that kind of breaks down as an outline the content within this. And I'm going to take a second now, and I want to actually walk you through that. So I'm going to switch over here, and I want to show you what we've created in the Prep Hub with this course. So hold on while I switch screens real quick here. So what you're seeing now is the Prep Hub. This is when you log in, this is set up where it's only the free resources. So all the materials that you're seeing in the Prep Hub right now are materials that any student who logs in, whether you've purchased anything or not, will be able to see. The content outline is over here on the left-hand side of the page. And when you go through it, you can really kind of review it in two different ways. You can use the plan format, which is what kind of defaults to here, where you can go through everything that's on here task by task, just as if you were reading it in the PDF. But I'm going to actually talk about it from this task view because it gives it to you in kind of an outline format. So you can see here, it has all of the different sections. So there's all of the information from the biological and biomedical foundations of living science systems. So each section of the exam has its own portion. And again, this is like an outline. And then within here, it's broken down by the foundational concepts and the content categories. So, and within it, if you click on one of these, you will see that it lists within there all of the information. So within the specific content category, what are you expected to know associated with this? So all of the different areas and what you're supposed to know with them. And included in there are links to content review resources. So we have in here links to the Khan Academy lessons that are appropriate to it. And then also we link to OpenStax textbooks. So OpenStax are open access textbooks that anybody can review at no charge. So if you can go into Khan Academy and look at the specific information, do those practice questions. You can also go to OpenStax and review the material there. So it gives you a place where you can keep track of the different parts of the test, do the review, see what's being tested, but it also gives you a place where you can find content review materials for your preparation. There's also some additional features within this course I just want to point out to you. Within each of the sections, you have the ability to identify confidence levels. So we interpret that as you're looking at this, again, thinking back, how comfortable am I with this material? You're going to prioritize where you spend your time and what you're doing. So how comfortable am I with the material? And you can indicate if you have high, medium, or low confidence. And this is a place where you can say, okay, so this is an area where I don't really remember this at all. I'm going to mark this as low. Or this is an area where I'm actually really, really strong. I actually am a TA in a biology class and I reteach this all the time. I'm going to mark this as high. This gives you the ability to kind of prioritize what do you know and what don't you know. And as you're reviewing within the table of contents, you can actually filter. So you can look at, you can use this to keep track. So if you have identified the confidence levels and you want to say, okay, today I'm going to focus on these these areas where I have low confidence, it allows you to keep track of the information and keep track of how you're doing. You also can add notes. So if you know that you have an area where you can say, hey, I want to review this thing separately, you can put a note in here and you can click through directly to that lesson that is appropriate for that. Also, as you're looking at this resource and thinking about how you do it, I want to tell you about a webinar that we had a few months ago with a learning specialist, Dr. Shavana Wynn, put together a webinar and presented it where she actually walked students through how to begin studying for the MCAT exam and how to prepare. And in that session, she actually used this content outline course and she talked about how you get started, how you identify your level, your confidence areas, and how you use this to keep track and to build your study plan. When you're in this course, if you actually go to the webinars tab and you go to the recorded session, you can actually find that session. So we have it other places as well that I'll show you later in the webinar. But if you're in the Prep Hub and click on the webinars, you can actually click through to this, and you can even watch the session right there in the Prep Hub and go back and forth. So if you're trying to remember what she said, it's a great place to find that information. But I really recommend that you check out this content outline course, look at the different tools and think about how it can help you as you're preparing for preparing your study plan and also reviewing the content associated with the course. So let me switch back here to our presentation. So once you familiarize yourself with the exam and what it measures, then you're going to start thinking about implementing your study and practice cycle. And you're starting with content review. So like I talked about before, so where are the areas where you need the most work? Where are you rusty? Where are you struggling? And that, or even if you haven't taken the course yet, that's where you're going to kind of start, because you want to make sure that you're familiar with it. But regardless, you want to make sure that you understand the material that's being tested on the exam. Next, you're going to begin working through practice material. So after you complete a set of practice questions or even do a practice exam, you want to make sure you're spending time reviewing your mistakes to understand what you got wrong and what led to those errors. You can adjust your study plan to incorporate those learnings into your review of the concept. So if you do practice questions and you get a question wrong, you need to look at it and say, why did I get this wrong? Is it because I read something incorrectly? So now you want to make sure you are take it a little slower next time so you don't miss something in the question. Do you just not know that information? Okay, now you want to spend some time and go back and do some additional review on that information and make sure you're doing additional practice questions to make sure that you are comfortable with the material. You know, the exam tests how you apply the knowledge to solve problems. So as you're doing these practice questions, the goal isn't to memorize the answers, but to develop an understanding of the material that will allow you to apply that knowledge to new questions asked on test day. Because anything you see through the Prep Hub, you'll never see those exact questions again, but that concept is very likely to be tested again. So what you want to make sure is you understand the information behind the concept so that if it's presented to you again, you can apply that knowledge. So as you're studying, you're going to repeat this cycle. You're going to go through, you're going to do practice questions, you're going to use active learning. You're going to make sure that as you study review materials, you're going to do practice questions, you're going to see what you got wrong, you're going to go back to studying. This is a constant review cycle as you go through everything on the test. And as I mentioned before, that webinar with Dr. Nguyen really gives some very specific guidance on how to approach this. So again, I definitely recommend that you take a look at that webinar if you didn't already attend, but she gives some great advice on how to approach everything. We always get a lot of questions asking us how to create a study plan. So I want to bring your attention to another free resource that we have in the Prep Hub about how to create your study plan guide. This is again is a free resource that's available to everybody, and I just want to take a minute to show you that resource. So I'm going to switch back to the Prep Hub again and go back to the user portal. And again, this is on the left side. So here's the study plan guide. Again, it opens up in a plan view where you can go through step by step. And it's broken out into 6 steps, but I'm going to switch to the task view because it's a little easier to talk about that way. Again, provides us an outline. And the study plan guide is presented as a course that you can go through step by step. But I would say at the beginning, take some time and again, go through it and look at the steps at the high level, thinking about what they mean and what they're telling you to do. So step 1, find out everything about the exam. This is a great resource because all of these are important documents and information you should read about the MCAT exam to be prepared for test day. So it's important to take a look at this information and just know you can find everything in one place. So rather than digging around the website, you can go here and find all of this information. Things we talked about already. Where do you stand? How much do you know? This is also going to summarize some of that information, but give you some resources you can take a look at and review if you're not sure how to get that started with that. Figuring out how you're going to prepare. What materials are you going to use? Are you going to use the free resources like Khan Academy and OpenStax that we provide here? Or do you have access to other resources another way? What are you going to use to do your content review? You're going to create a study plan guide or study plan. How are you going to approach studying? How much time do you have? When are you going to study? you're going to study with a group, putting all of this together. So this again gives some additional steps. And we even have in our document an example of a study plan you can see with breaks down. There's a PDF available within that step that you can open up and see an example of how you could structure a study plan. You don't have to do this exactly. This is just an example, but it gets you thinking about how many hours you would have a day. How do you fit this in against your other course schedule and other obligations? What are you going to use to study? When are you going to do the different topics? So for you personally, you're going to have to create something that's unique to your own situation, but you want to have a plan for it, how you're going to work through this. And then again, it provides some other information. So I would definitely recommend taking a look at this. And again, you don't have to do everything exactly, but it gives you a structure that you can follow to have a sense of how you approach this and the things you should consider as you're thinking about your study plan guide. And we'll certainly be open to answer questions as we get to Q&A if you have some additional questions about this. So let me go back to the deck. Okay, so we talked about the study plan, we've talked about content review. Let's talk about the practice resources. The AAMC offers 6 full-length practice exams, and 2 of those are free. So when I went into the Prep Hub, you saw those. There's the sample test, and there's the free practice exam. Both the practice exam and the sample test are full-length experiences. So they have all of the sections, all of the same number of questions as the actual exam. The free practice exam will provide you scores and percentile ranks. The sample test does not. But as you think about that, I just recommend you don't overlook the sample test. In the CARS section, there are video explanations of 4 CARS passage sets that were created by a cognitive scientist that walks you through how to approach the passages and the questions. So if you take the exam and you're doing a review of the CARS section, you'll see that information in the review screen. And if CARS is a section that you struggle with, these videos are really helpful in helping you to understand how to approach it and how to think about them as you're answering those questions. And if you're looking to maximize your free resources, I really strongly recommend you think about starting with the sample test. It's just a place to get a sense of where do you have gaps in concept, skills, or content. Use that to kind of identify and prioritize. And again, I know I've mentioned this, I think 3 times now, though, the webinar we did with Dr. Wynn, that is something that's very specific. She says she recommends that you take that sample test, and when you look at the review screen, look at it from there's a view where you can see the content and skills area, and it breaks down the different parts of the test, how you performed in each one of them. And you can even use that to identify where are the areas where your competence is high, where are the areas where your competence is low, to help you prioritize your studying. So if you start with that sample test, it can help you kind of figure out where is your starting point. And then you can save the other scored practice exam for later as a check of your progress, because as you do content review, as you do practice questions, you are going to want to do multiple practice exams as you go, not only to practice using the exam features and the shortcuts, but also it gives you a sense of where your score is and how you're progressing towards whatever your goal is. And again, with the time test, the exam features, like what the interface is going to look like, it is important to practice that. You don't want any surprises on test day. So taking those full-length exams under as close to test conditions as possible is just really important to make sure you don't have any surprises. In addition to the practice exams, we have another type of practice product, and these are question sets. So among the question sets, we have some subject-specific question packs. We have a section bank. We have the CARS diagnostic tool, and then a few other smaller question sets. We also have one print product, the official guide to the MCAT exams. It has 150 practice questions and contains information about the exam. A lot of the information in the guide is on our website, but the paper product or the book does provide it all in one place for you. If you struggle with the critical analysis and reasoning skills section, the CARS diagnostic tool could be a great resource for you. In this product, a cognitive scientist provides a video read aloud of a few passage sets and how to approach the questions. This product provides an overview of each of the skills tested and helps you identify your strengths and weaknesses among the skills. and then leaves you with some strategies to help you improve those skills. And there's practice questions included in this product as well. So it's a place where you can kind of learn what's being tested, get some advice on how to approach it, and then practice those questions within the product. We also offer 4 different bundles. The most popular is our online only bundle. That includes all of our online products. So those 4 practice exams plus the question sets that I just described, as well as the CARS diagnostic tool. The complete bundle is everything that's in the online bundle, but it also includes a paper guide, the paper copy of the official guide to the MCAT exam. So if you really do feel strongly that you want that book, the complete bundle will give you all the online products plus the book. And the question pack bundle includes our 6 subject-specific question packs. We also offer the printed guide bundle, which is the online questions for the guide, as well as the paper book. And then keep in mind that we have those 2 free practice exams. So in total, there are 16 online products available to you through the Prep Hub. Please note that the online only bundle is included as a benefit of our fee assistance program, which you may qualify for. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. So the goal of all this prep work is to be prepared for the actual exam. So as you approach test day, I just want to provide a few reminders, including conducting a final rehearsal. Taking a full-length practice exam under real or close to real conditions the last few weeks before your exam is something every examinee should do. You want to try to recreate the exam conditions. So we often suggest working with an advisor to do that, to do a mock exam environment. But you also could have people that you're studying with could help you do this, but you want to make sure it's as close to possible as possible. And we have some resources on our site, like a checklist for mock exams that can kind of help you put that together and make sure you're remembering everything. You want to make sure that you have your travel to the test center planned, so you're not rushed. Where is the test center? How do you get there? How long does it take? Especially at whatever time your test is starting in the day of the week, try it on a week when you don't have the test, obviously, and see what that commute is like, because you want to make sure that you get there early. And please make sure you read the MCAT essentials for all the information and what to expect on test day. It's so important that you read that thoroughly. I was at a conference a year or 2 ago, and a pre-health advisor was talking about one of their students that didn't know what the security protocols would be like on test day. And when they got there, it just threw him off. He ended up walking into the test just with a lot of stress because of everything that happened that wasn't expecting. It just caused extra stress on test day. And he kind of felt that maybe that impacted his score. So we recommend that you do take some time and read the essentials so that you know what to expect on test day. So you just don't have any surprises, because you want your performance on the test day not to be impacted by something like that. You've prepared, you've done all of this work, so there's no reason to have any additional stresses that day. And the MCAT essentials will give you everything you need to know. So just a few more resources to share, and then we're going to move into the Q&A, because I'm sure we have questions coming in. But if you do have a question, anything I've talked about, please go ahead and put it into the Q&A now, because we'll be getting to that very soon. The AAMC Fee Assistant Program can greatly reduce the fees related to taking and preparing for the MCAT and medical school applications. The eligibility requirements are based on family size and income. So to qualify, your family income has to be equal to or lesser than 400% of the federal poverty level. So for example, a family of 4, 400% of that level would be an annual income of $120,000. The program includes the MCAT Prep online only bundle for free. So all of those online materials I just received are part of what you receive as an MCAT Prep benefit. This benefit, though, is only offered once per person, although you can be qualified for the fee assistant program multiple times, up to 5 times. The prep benefit is only offered 1 time per individual. We also offer the fee assistance program for Canadian examinees. The application process is a little bit different, but if you go to the website that's listed on the slide, you can get additional information about that. Just please note, we do recommend that you apply at least 10 days in advance of when you want to use your benefits. The benefits are not retroactive. So you want to make sure that you apply for those benefits and receive them before you purchase any prep products or you register for the test. Usually once you've submitted your application, you usually hear within 10 days. So when is the right time to take the MCAT exam? That's a tough question. And the answer really is that you should take it when you're ready. We have calendars for the testing year on our website, along with score release dates. So that's going to let you know when the test is offered and when scores are available. But there's a few questions you should think about to help determine when you might be ready. You should think about when you want to apply to medical school. Some MDs take the MCAT exam the same year that they're applying. Some take it sooner. Keep in mind that completing the application process as a whole, it does take time. So make sure you're taking that into consideration as well. You want to think about whether or not you're feeling comfortable with the content. You're taking those practice exams. How are you scoring on the practice exam? Are your scores on the practice exam close to what you're looking to get or what your goal is on that? Because the practice exam is the greatest indicator of where you're performing. So how are you doing on those practice exams? The MCAT doesn't have any specific required courses that you have to take before registering for the exam, but you want to make sure that you have the time to prepare. And if there's any coursework you haven't had, you may want to make sure you have a little more time to learn that before taking it. And if you feel like you want to make sure you have time to take the test more than once, if you need it, you may want to take the test a little bit sooner in the testing year versus later if you don't think it depends on how many times you think you may need to take it and how much additional time you may need to prep. It's also important to think about testing limits as you're planning. In a single year, you can take the test, you can take it 3 times. Over 2 consecutive years, you can only take it 4 times. And in a lifetime, there's a 7-time maximum for taking the exam. So as you're planning, that's also something to consider with how many times you would be able to retest. Additionally, keep in mind that medical schools do receive all of your exam scores, not just your most recent or your best score. If you do choose to void your exam on test day, or you don't show up on test day, you miss the appointment, medical schools won't see that, but those will count against your testing limits. So just all those things to consider. And again, all of that information is available on our website, but just those are all things to think about as you're planning for when you will take your exam. We often get asked questions about admission requirements related to when to take the test. How early can I take it, or how late, and still have it considered for an admission cycle? And as with most questions related to admissions, the answer varies from school to school. We do have resources to help get you those answers, though. A free report called The Latest and Oldest MCAT Test Administration Dates Considered is available on the webpage shown. So aamc.org/MSAR reports. If you go to that page, you'll actually be able to find a report that has this information, and it will show you, just as the name said, the latest and the oldest MCAT test administrations that they will consider for the admission cycle. There's a lot of other reports on this page too, so I definitely recommend that you take a look and look at the information there as it relates to the admissions process. One of the most valuable resources as you prepare for medical school is your pre-health advisor. Most U.S. colleges and universities have designated individuals who specialize in health professions advising. A pre-health advisor can help you choose the proper courses, find meaningful health-related experiences, explore your personal strengths and weaknesses, and assist with the admissions process. We encourage you to work with an advisor throughout the process of preparing for the MCAT and application for medical school. So if you're still in school and haven't connected with a pre-health advisor yet, please check out what is available at your school. If you've already completed your undergrad degree, you may want to reach out to the school you attended, because it's not unusual for a pre-health advisor to offer support to alumni as well. And for those who don't have pre-health advisors available at their universities, The National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions have members who volunteer as advisors for individuals who don't have access on their own. You can submit a request to be partnered with an advisor on their website. But I do want to emphasize that these are volunteers. They don't have specific staff dedicated to this. So if you submit a request, just be patient because the volunteers are happy to assist, but it may take a little bit of time to be placed. So if you do, please be patient. But check that out if you don't have somebody available through your institution. In addition to the MCAT prep materials, the AAMC has a pre-med resources page that lists recorded webinars. So the webinar that I talked about multiple times today, in addition to being the Prep Hub, you can find it there. We also have other webinars that we've had over the years that you can find there. We have a calendar of pre-med events and other resources containing guidance and tips on how to apply through AMCAS or finance medical school. You'll find recorded webinars for the fee assistance program, for the preview professional readiness exam, and several webinars with medical students about how they prepared for the MCAT, and of course, the most recent webinar that I've mentioned many times. We're just about to go to Q&A, but before we close this webinar, I just want to leave you with a few tips that we've received from medical students. We've hosted several webinars now with current medical students, and we've compiled some tips that those students have shared with us. One of them is to find an accountability partner when studying. This could be through an online community, but you may find benefit in working with individuals going through the same experience. Having that person to talk to and share your concerns and your thoughts, having somebody to do practice exams with, someone to teach the material to. One of the best ways to see whether or not you understand the material is to teach it to somebody else, and especially if it's material you're uncomfortable with. That's a great way. A student that participated in the webinar with us, Jenny Ajoma, is an MD PhD student, and she had shared in the webinar that she found an accountability partner through Reddit, and one of them even lived in her same city. So when they did their practice exams, they scheduled it so they could do that together. We also want to acknowledge that not everyone learns the same. So it's okay to stop doing something if it isn't working for you. There are a lot of prep resources out there, and they may not all work, not for you personally. So in our webinar, Jenny shared that there were some popular resources that, some students swore by, but she just didn't find them helpful. And looking back, she wished she had stopped using them earlier because there were other tools that did work better for her, and she wished she had started using them sooner. So make sure you're kind of evaluating what you're doing and how well it's working, and adjust and make changes if something isn't working for you. We also want to stress how important it is to take care of yourself during the process. The path to medical school, and of course, going to medical school, is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So now is a good time to set up habits to preserve your mental health. Jenny shared that she found that when she was preparing for the MCAT and thinking about it, she was really tying her self-worth to her achievements, like her test scores, and how detrimental that was to her mental health. And the students that were in that webinar listening, it really resonated with them, and they felt like they were doing the same thing. They were thinking about it the same way as Jenny. So just please make sure that you take care of yourself, and remember that you're more than just a test score, and there are many pieces of your application. So just make sure you're taking care of yourself as you're going through this process and preparing for medical school. So with that, it's time for Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn, our Outreach and Engagement Manager, and she's going to moderate the Q&A.
Thanks, Lauren, and welcome everyone. We had some great questions coming in, and we encourage you to continue to send those. We've had actually quite a few questions come in asking about length of time to prepare, how long, how many questions you might recommend we finish before taking the MCAT, or how many days, how many hours, things like that. So maybe if you can speak to amount of time to prepare, and things of that nature.
Sure. And I wish I could just say to everyone here that this is the number. This is exactly how long it takes to prepare for the MCAT exam, but it's just not that simple. So we do survey our students. So that after the MCAT exam, there's questionnaires that go out, and we do ask them how long they typically took to prepare for the exam. And, usually it's between 3 to 4 months is what students will say when they look at how long it took to prepare. When we've consulted with the medical education learning specialist that we work with, Dr. Shabana Wynn, she actually recommends that students think about starting their prep about 6 months before they're planning to test. And again, that may not be possible for everybody, so it's no panic if you don't have that much time, but that's what she says students should think about, because you're going in and you're starting with figuring out, where am I at? How far am I away from my goal score? If you are rustier with the material, it's been longer since you've learned the material. If your score is a little lower than you were hoping it would be when you're starting, you're likely going to need a little more time, because you're going to need to spend more time on that content review. You're going to need to do more practice questions. You're going to need to spend more time getting up to speed on the material. If you're a little bit closer, you may be able to do it in a shorter period of time. But the most important thing really is to figure out where you're starting, to prioritize, what are those areas where your knowledge area is a little bit lower, and make sure you spend the time and think about it as a progress. So if you go through and you say, use that content outline I show, and you identified where's your low confidence, where's your medium confidence, where's your high confidence, your first goal should be, how do you turn those lows into mediums? How do you turn those mediums into high, and start that progress and continue to take practice tests and and evaluate your progress as you go along. So I know that's not the easiest answer, but again, on average, it's 3 to 4 months, but make sure that you're looking at where you're starting and giving yourself the time to become comfortable with the material as you move forward. But I would emphasize that practice questions are an incredibly use the practice exams to kind of pull it all together and see how you're progressing.
Great, thank you. Okay, another question that came in. The content feels like it's just never ending and there's always something more. How do we keep up with what we know and what we don't know?
So I think that one of the big things that's important to know is, again, I would recommend using the content outline or another resource to keep track of where you're feeling with the materials. Continue to do practice questions, because as you perform on those practice questions, and the review process is where you identify what did you get wrong and why did you get it wrong. And that's going to help you to kind of figure out, in the products we have places you can make notes, flashcards. So if you have a question that you've gotten wrong, create a flashcard for yourself. A lot of students use things like Anki decks to keep track of things, and the spaced repetition and using all of those tools to kind of review the materials. But what I would recommend, though, is making sure, again, that you, as you're building out your plan, that you have time to take multiple practice exams, because that's really the best place to look at your progress. Because the content outline is big, and as you do those practice exams, you can kind of evaluate where you're moving, and each one, you do the review afterwards to kind of identify before the next test, what is the content you're reviewing, what are you reviewing, what did you get wrong and why, and that's where you spend your studying until you get into the next test. And it is a challenge. There is a lot there. You're not focusing on memorizing every fact. You're trying to get the information so that you have enough knowledge that you can apply it to the different situations provided within the exam.
What would you say is the most effective approach to reviewing the results of practice exams?
So definitely so when you're reviewing the practice exams, again, I would recommend focusing on one, you can take a look at within the hub, we have different views that you can look at. And there's a content and skills tab where you can actually see within the different areas. So rather than one question at a time, in the content and skills, you can actually see for content category 1, I'm making this up because I don't have it in front of me. I don't know the counts of questions, but there were 6 questions in content category 1. And you got, 5 of the 6 right. That's an area where you're probably actually doing pretty well, but maybe in content category 4, you got none of the 6 right. That says, okay, maybe this is an area where I'm a little weaker in content. And then as you go through, and from that area, you can actually click through to those specific questions. And again, look at the questions that you got wrong and figure out why you got them wrong. When you're doing the practice exam review, I would focus primarily on questions that you got wrong. You know, if in your practice, when you're maybe guessing on a question, you might want to think about like flagging it or something. So that way, when you're doing review, you can also look at your flagged questions, because if you got it right, but it was a total guess, you may still want to look at it. But I would say in good use of your time when you're looking at the practice exams, spend most of your time on what you got wrong. So that way you're spending your studying there rather than hours and hours on things that you got right. Focus on what you got wrong first, and using that to tailor your studying before your next practice exam or next practice questions.
Okay, we have a great question about motivation. It's difficult to stay motivated to keep studying. Do you have any tips on keeping a resilient focus on material and staying engaged?
I mean, I think it's challenging. I think one, I think you need to make sure that in your study plan, you do allow yourself some time for whatever, you know, brings you joy. So some time for spending with your family. Obviously, you are making sacrifices during this process because it is a lot of work and there is a lot to do, but make sure it's not all you have. Make sure there is some enjoyment there, because that can, you know, rewarding yourself. So knowing that if you're doing this, this is the thing you get to do afterwards. So looking for ways that you know, can keep yourself there and know that there's something to look forward afterwards. I would say the other side is, you know, it's really the, you know, as you think about like your application, you know, what's your why? Why are you doing this? Like, what's driving you toward medical school? And I know it sounds a little aspirational there, but think about like what the end goal of why you're doing this and what you're going towards. Because again, because you do your application, you're going to have that information anyway. You're going to have to explain why this is the thing you're pursuing. But keeping that in mind as well. And again, I would also make sure that if you can, find some accountability partner, somebody that's going through the same thing, because I think that that can also help. You can motivate each other. So if you've got a study plan, if you've got a study group, when they can help kind of bring you back as you have those tough times. And also being kind enough to yourself to realize that everybody struggles to focus sometimes, and everybody struggles to stay on task, and it's okay. You got to bring yourself back to it, but it's also totally normal.
Can you talk a little bit more about preparing for the cars section?
Sure. In the car section, a lot of people do struggle with it because it's not science-based like the other sections. There's not content you can review in the same way. Preparing for the car section is really the best way to prepare for the car section is to do lots and lots of practice questions. So a lot of students that we've talked to, you know, they have a really specific study plan in front of them around this day. I'm going to focus on, you know, the BBLS section, and I'm going to do foundational concept 1 this week or whatever that is. But in addition to that, they do cars practice problems every single day. You don't have to do hundreds of them, just a few. And with every cars question, make sure you're going through and reviewing the rationales, the explanations of why the right answer is the right answer and why the wrong answers are the wrong answers. And I also recommend that you, if you do the sample test, watch the videos that are available in it. The CARS diagnostic tool has videos that we'll walk through. There's the Khan Academy also has Khan resources and videos, and there's a roadmap to the Khan Academy lessons for the CARS that can take you through that information and kind of walk you through. But using any of those video resources, I think, is important because it explains the thought process behind it. And just for CARS, you really just want to make sure you're practicing them regularly, and whenever you get an answer wrong, evaluating and finding where that right answer is so that you can kind of get used to how they're written and what it's asking you to do.
What would you say is more important for the MCAT content review or test taking practice?
So you really can't I can't really say one is more important than the other, because they're both incredibly important, but content review is, if you don't know the content on the MCAT, the test taking practices won't get you there. So you really do have to know the content, but it's really both things. And, you know, memorizing content also won't get you there, because keep in mind that the MCAT it's measuring content knowledge, but it's measuring your ability to apply that content knowledge in specific problem solving situations, you know. So it's not just saying, you know, it's not asking you to just provide information, to just provide facts. There's a lot more to it. You have to be able to, you have to have that content knowledge, and then you're given this situation or this, you know, this, the question, and it's asking you to apply that knowledge. So while you have to have the content knowledge, and if there's big gaps, you do need to spend time learning that knowledge first, but then you really need to always pair content review with practice questions, because one, it's going to help it stick. If you just read something and don't do practice questions, you're unlikely to remember it. But also you want to practice applying that knowledge in the way it will be tested on the MCAT, because that's really making sure you don't just, that you really understand it rather than just having been exposed to it.
Can you talk a little bit about juggling priorities, like work and school, and kind of the calamity of everything, and also really trying to prepare for the MCAT?
Yeah, and you know, again, acknowledge that it is challenging, and during that time for when you're preparing for the MCAT, you know, it's going to be it's extra that you have to do. So it is challenging. And this is an area where I think knowing that you have those other things that you're going to be working through, you know, if it's possible, before you decide when you're going to take the MCAT, try to take those things into consideration. So when I talked earlier about, you know, giving yourself 6 months to prepare rather than the average 3 to 4 months. And again, I know that we're in the middle of a testing year, and there's people that are likely on this that are testing later this year. So not everybody has that freedom. So yeah, I'm acknowledging that. But if you're at a point where you're still deciding when to test, you know, start with giving yourself that 6 months so that you have that flexibility to, and if you have a lot of other obligations, so if you do work a job or you have family commitments, you might need longer. Again, I talked about Jenny, the medical student who did that webinar with us. She took a year to prepare for the MCAT because she worked while she did that. So she was, I think she did a gap year. So I think she graduated, but while she was in school, she always worked, and then she had full-time commitments because she had, you know, she needed to support herself. So it took her a year to prepare. She wanted it to be shorter, but that's how long she needed. So I think that the more obligations you have, you need to try to give yourself more time. And then again, just try to balance it as best you can with what you have available to you.
Sorry, just reading this real quick.
Yeah.
While I'm checking this out, let's answer a different question about, as a freshman, is that too soon to start prepping for the MCAT, or should you hold off and wait till you've taken some more coursework?
So as a freshman, I would say it's probably a little too early to start diving into MCAT practice exams and maybe using the AAMC resources related to like practice questions. It's a little early for that, but it's not too early to start thinking about the MCAT. So like as I talked about, like that content outline course, like as a freshman, I would either go, you know, you can go into the prep hub, you don't have to buy anything, or get the PDF and download it. And, you know, take a look at what's going to be measured on the MCAT and, you know, what you're taking in school. So if you're a freshman, you're taking like your intro biology courses, look at your syllabus for your class and kind of compare it to what's on the MCAT. What are you learning this year? And, you know, as you're looking at that material where you see overlap, like save those notes, or if you've got like a PDF of the, however the textbook is, if there's opportunity to save that material, or if maybe there's a concept that's going to be on the MCAT and you're having a little bit harder time with it, go to your office hours, make sure you're digging into that. So I wouldn't necessarily say you should do MCAT prep specifically, but it is really, really important to think about what you're learning and the material and when. And then also I would say connect with your pre-health advisor if you have one, and think about, because you can look at, the admissions process. So, do you think, and I know some of these are big questions as freshmen you probably don't even want to think about, but do you think you might want to go to medical school like right after you graduate, or do you think you might want to take a year? When might you want to take the MCAT exam? Are you going to take it in your junior year of college? Or are you going to take it your senior year of college, or a year afterwards? Because the coursework. So like there's biochemistry on the MCAT, there's organic chemistry on the MCAT. So as you think about your classes, when do you think you might want to take them to try to get them in a place where you've covered most of that material before you go into the MCAT? Because it's easier to learn that in a classroom than to try to learn some of it on your own. So again, as freshmen, it's really more about planning ahead and understanding what you're going to need to do later rather than preparing for the MCAT specifically.
And then for anyone on here who is possibly has already graduated, looking to return to school, and wanting to jump into the MCAT, any tips for those students who post back?
Sure. And for those students, I really recommend, I guess the advice isn't really all that different, other than you've already learned the material. So one is, I think, is it's trying to figure out where you're at with the material that you have. So if you've been out of school for a little bit, because it's possible you're in a field where you're still using some of that knowledge, but maybe you haven't had to look at it in a while. So I would probably say for the student that's a little bit further out, I would recommend maybe starting with taking the sample test. Again, it doesn't have scores, so you're not going to be distracted by where your score is, but use that to kind of say, okay, within those content categories, within those content and skills, how am I doing? Where is my information? And then, giving yourself room to prep and to study based on where you're at, and then working through that plan. If you've, potentially even then you can also check back with the institution you graduated from. If they have pre-health advisors, the pre-health advisors may actually have specific advice that they give to students who have finished and aren't in school. So that I would definitely check in with them too, to see if they have any advice for you as well.
Okay. I think we have come pretty much to the end of our questions. Just taking one last peek. One more. Can you give us a sense of the efficacy of the question banks versus the section banks? Maybe just some understanding of the difference between those.
So I'm trying to think how to even approach that question. So they're just within the question banks are subject specific questions. So they're either their chemistry, their physics, their biology. Where the section bank is, it's based on, like, the questions are based on the sections of the tests, whether it's the BBLS section or whatever. All of the questions, regardless of which products you're using, are testing content that's relevant to the MCAT, and all of the questions are written by the same people that write the MCAT exam. I would say the section bank questions probably look a little bit more like the questions that you'll have on the exam, whereas the question bank questions are a little more pure content knowledge. They're not they're a little bit of a simpler, they're not easy, but simpler in terms of what's being tested on an individual question is a little it's just more straightforward, I would guess, maybe is the word I want to say. So as a student that's starting, I would say if you are early on with your content knowledge and you're trying to evaluate and practice specific content areas, the question question packs are really good at kind of pinpointing what knowledge you have and what knowledge you don't have and where you're strong and where you're not. As you're getting into practicing like MCAT specific questions that will look like just like what you're having on practice day, the section bank is a little closer to that, as well as the practice exams. The full length practice exams obviously mirror the exam, but the section bank that mirrors questions that you'll see on test day a little more closely than the question packs, with the exception of cars. Cars is pretty much the same regardless.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Lauren. That wraps up our questions, and I'm going to hand it back to Jennifer.
Great, thank you. And please do give us your feedback on today's webinar by filling out the evaluation that will pop up on your screen as soon as we end. We did record the session. We'll email you once we post the archive. On behalf of the Association of American Medical Colleges, have a wonderful day.